Hey Neha.
Hi, Joey. I'm Neha Narula. I'm the director of the DCI.
And I'm Joe Ito, the director of the MIT Media Lab.
Yeah, and we're here today to talk about the DCI,
Yeah.
which is the Digital Currency Initiative here at the Media Lab, how we got started, and about the digital currency, cryptocurrency, blockchain space, right? I actually wasn't here when the DCI got started. So Joey, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, you founded this 2 years ago. What were you thinking? Where did it come from?
Yeah, so I was into cryptocurrencies really early in the 90s when DigiCash came out. So I kind of had an interest in it, but I kind of was looking at the Bitcoin blockchain thing without really being that excited about it. And then Jeremy Rubin, who we both know,
Yeah.
he was one of the founders of the Bitcoin Club, which is a student activity here at MIT. And at a food camp, he was kind of really excited about it and talking about it. And so I was pretty late actually to the Bitcoin thing, but he was hanging out at the Media Lab, and so we were starting to pay attention to the Bitcoin thing when the Bitcoin Foundation was having problems and it was sort of imploding. And I was talking to a bunch of people, including people at Stanford and other places, about maybe trying to create support for the core developers who I thought it was important that they were independent, and that one of the important functions of the Bitcoin Foundation was to support the independent core developers. And so initially I was trying to get a fund so that they could go to any university, but because the time constraint and because all of the core developers that were funded by the foundation said they'd be happy to come work at MIT, we sort of stitched together this initiative. Initially it was just to fund them, but we decided that actually having a non-profit academic hub to do this sort of work was important.
Yeah, and talk about that a little bit more, independence, right?
Yeah.
Why is that so important in this space? Why is it so important to have academic institutions and independent developers and things like that?
So this sort of goes to my internet background because, and to me, because I did a lot of internet stuff, everything looks like the internet. But on the internet, it was really important that we had these layers of open interoperable standards. So you have like Ethernet and TCP/IP and HTML and the web standards, and they generally came out of government funded or academic funded or basically not-for-profit groups who are just trying to design it the right way and without IP encumbrance and things like that. And I think it's important to have a bunch of people who just care about getting it technically right to get it started at least. And I felt like in the cryptocurrency space, so much of the activity was being fueled by startups or big companies, and I am still worried that we're not going to get to standardization. Now, Bitcoin is really different from the internet in some ways, but I feel like we can talk about this if you want, but your audit of IOTA, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to go around and audit these things?
Yeah.
One, who cares enough about it?
Yeah.
And two, if you're auditing a competitor's thing, you're clearly biased, right?
Yeah.
So who can be a neutral party in something like that?
Yeah, and that kind of mirrors my own story too, because I got in this space fairly late as well, right? But after you did, and I think it was around 2 years ago, in 2015, and I read your article actually on why Bitcoin is and is not like the internet, and I read that, and that I started to see the space in a different way, because I think a lot of people thought it was just about money for so long, and money still is an incredibly important part of it, but it's also got, all these other, it's this open protocol and these layers that we like to talk about, right? And when I read your article, that kind of crystallized something in my head, and then of course I got kind of pulled into the DCI, and now here we are.
Yep.
But yeah, I really feel like we have a different kind of take on it than a lot of other people with the layers, right?
Yeah.
Because we want things to be simple, and we want we're really thinking about it from the internet days, right? And so why is that so important? Why is this simple layering approach so important?
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think that the network effect that you get out of everybody using the same protocol, the fact that we don't have 4 different types of TCP/IP. I still remember when we had AppleTalk and Token Ring and all these different networks, and the computers, like my Macintosh couldn't talk to my Windows machine, right? So that's stupid. Obviously, there are different ways to do it. You can use Lightning Network. There's different ideas of how you might create networks of networks. My hypothesis is, though, that I still remember when email, you could go across different networks using things like UCP and stuff like that. So there are ways to make networks of networks. But I think in the end, having everyone concentrated on a single standard makes a lot of sense when it's a system that's trying to communicate with each other. And what you need is a place for all these different people to convene, including the corporate interests, but also the government and everybody else. And it's got to be something that's not trying to make money, because like when we talk to the central banks, they don't they like us because we're not trying to sell them something, right? And so I think there's something, and again, I think startups and for-profits are important because they're the ones that build the business on top of these layers or between the sandwich. But like for instance, we've never been able to get a really good ID system because no one, Google doesn't want to use Facebook's ID.
Yeah.
Facebook doesn't want, and OAuth is getting close, but it takes forever because they don't trust each other.
It's like such a slow, laborious process. And we look at these groups, right? Like there are these groups that have developed to kind of shepherd these protocols, but they weren't there at the very beginning necessarily. At the very beginning, it was like a group of really passionate, kind of spread out people in all these different areas, right? Who had to come together. And you mentioned like TCP/IP and Token Ring. I've been like trying to read about the history of open protocols, and it's really interesting to see what ends up winning, because it's not always the best tech. It's not always like the best design. It's sometimes like with Token Ring and Ethernet, it was like, oh, Ethernet hardware's cheaper and the cables are cheaper, right?
Well, so it's interesting because I think it's like you said, it's inclusion, right? Like when we built, the internet service provider in Japan, the thing that was awesome was, so we were, this is like old people talk, but like X25, which was a competing protocol at the time, you literally had to push the specs around on a dolly. There was so much junk, right? And so many contracts.
You mean like the specification of how X25 works?
Works, okay, right? And you had to be a big, huge company with thousands of engineers to actually turn that into code.
Yeah.
Whereas the internet was these little 2 or 3 page RFCs, and they were humble requests for comment, and a bunch of students could kind of figure out how to use it. We could buy used junk hardware on mailing lists and put it together. And so it's like that, I think, with Ethernet and other things where, we built Token Ring networks and stuff like that, but the ability to write your own software and hack the stuff together was really important. I think the lack of IP encumbrance allowed entrance, like new companies also eventually, but also I think it's the community. So ICANN had all this, political stuff, but the really cool part of ICANN was the people working on the names and numbers, people working on the routing tables, people working on security, and they were the best. And they hung out because they liked each other, and they were the best. And so the reason why I'm kind of a Bitcoin blockchain maximalist is that I think that there are just more people who are excited about this stuff in that community. So they attract more. There's like a gravity well. Now, sometimes you can blow it up by pop drama or other things, but for now, I think it does have kind of a critical mass.
Yeah, and you and I are like you really believe that, and I'm kind of like still on the fence, I think, a little bit about which one's going to win, just because I know which one I think is the right design and the best technology and the most secure and sort of that stuff right now. But I am very cognizant of the fact that the best design and security doesn't always make it, and it is about the community. And the Bitcoin community is so strange. It like rejects any sort of leadership. I think that's there's been so much drama and there's been so many like attempts to do different things, and every single person I've seen who's tried to be the savior of Bitcoin has just gotten ejected from the community like really fast, like spit back out or something.
But then I talked to people like Corey Fields or like Vlad, and
they're great.
They're like rocks, right? And those are the people who I think end up not. They don't exercise political power that much, but they're actually the sort of the bedrock of the community.
They're
in
building
some ways,
stuff.
Right? They're building stuff. And when you go to a lot of these communities, often the people who actually are respected are the people who are doing a lot of the work, right?
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes, you get attacks on the community of people coming in trying to fix everything.
Yeah.
But in a way, they do get, pushed away. I'm also sort of skeptical about whether the community will be able to pull itself together. I mean, I do think that you had leadership like John Postel and others who, for a while were doing all the names and numbers and
With ICANN.
ICANN. And also, we had 10 or 20 years before the money people got around.
Yeah.
And so we could actually kind of hang around and be a little hippie for a while on the internet. Whereas right now, you've kind of got the worst of all worlds.
Money was there from the very beginning.
Money,
Yeah.
well, it's about money,
Yeah.
right? And then, you've got these cryptocurrencies that have billions of dollars of value of kind of angry internet
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So they haven't. It is different. It's a little bit more toxic in many ways.
Yeah. Yeah. There was just like an announcement today that the Raiden network, which is kind of like Ethereum's version of Lightning, is doing an ICO. And so it's like it's hard because and we were just talking about this in our office, open source developers, there's not really an opportunity for them to make a lot of money doing this. They don't do it for money. They do it because they really love it and they want to do it. But then in this space, you see all these people out there raising tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's just like, what is going on right now, right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, money corrupts.
Yeah.
And I think that the real kind of problem with all this is that cryptocurrencies are sort of fundamentally about money. And so it has this really weird dynamic of like enticing people to take a path where they could see their work converted into cash. And it's really hard not to take that because even if you have a family, you almost have a family responsibility to care about money, right? So I think it's I think this ICO thing. So I do think it's bad. I think there's a lot of scamminess just looking at the people who are getting scammed and so on. So I do think in the short run, it's bad. But a lot of stuff starts out bad. So I think in the long run, it's possible that we figure out a structure where it doesn't necessarily have to be externally regulated, but at least self-regulated in a way that that's harder to scam. I think it needs to become more scam resistant. It has to make it so that people can't. I think you want to take the speculation out of it and figure out a way for things like ICOs to actually be valuable in the operation of something useful.
Right.
But I don't think that's
I think
what's happening right now.
the onus is on. So like I agree. Right now, if you're doing an ICO, I'm immediately kind of suspicious, and I think the onus is on you to prove that there's like a good reason for your token existing and how that interacts with what you're building for sure. And I think things will definitely get better as we move forward. ICO, by the way, is initial coin offering for anyone listening who might not know what that is, and it's like this ability to issue your own token. And you said something. You said this is all speculation right now, but isn't money fundamentally speculation?
Well, it's one category, right? There's a certain category. Well, so finance and investment is about speculation, but money is also used to do transactions. And you could have one penny, and if it moved fast enough, it could take care of everybody's transactions, but no one would be speculating on that penny. So speculation is just one piece of money, and then the other is just accounting, unit of account, right? So if I'm just trying to log the my inventory and things like that, you also use money, and so there's a lot of different things for money, and you can actually make it so that money can't be or is harder to speculate on by making it less liquid, by putting restrictions on it. So and I think the problem is that speculation is the easiest way to make money, which is the greater fool's theory that somebody dumb is going to buy it from you for more. But that will create a bubble, and that will pop. But the architecture of the technology underneath that's not going to break. And so the internet, remember when it popped once, the Dow went all the way back to pre-internet prices, and we've had several of those. So I think we're going to go through cycles on this as well, and it will scare away some.
I know. I personally cannot wait for the bubble to pop because I think it'll clear out a lot of sort of like the underbrush from the forest, and then the trees can grow, right? I think it'll be really good once the bubble does pop. But like you can't catch a falling knife, right? So who knows when this is? Who knows when this is actually going to happen? So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. The technology is what interests me too. It's almost like money is like cryptocurrencies are programmable money and tokens are programmable equity, and like the combination of that is really fascinating. I think we only have like a minute or so left, so should we say anything else about the DCI? Well, we're going to be doing a few more of these, hopefully. Not all of them will have Joey, though, which this is really awesome. And we're going to talk about ICOs, we're going to talk about digital fiat currency, and we're going to talk about Lightning Network and a lot of other stuff that we're going to be working on.
And you should leave comments if you have things you'd like us to talk about.
Yeah.
And go to the website and join the Facebook group.
Yeah, join the Facebook group and tell us what you think about this and what we should talk about and how we should do it. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, thanks,
Thanks,
Joey.
Anna.
Yeah.